is very important to history. Like our old friend Adam Smith thought that, quote, property, money, and markets not only existed before political institutions, but were the very foundation of human society. Yeah, he was pretty into economy, so he was probably a little biased toward money, but it is important. Smith also thought that before there was money, there was barter, but barter could be cumbersome. Like if I make cheese and you make shoes and you're lactose intolerant, then barter breaks down because I need shoes, but you don't need cheese. Then I have to live like a hobbit, I get this very powerful ring, it's like really stressful, I end up having to go to Mordor, it's just very complicated. So Smith's idea is that rather than adapt to shoelessness, humans created a commodity that they would agree upon ahead of time could be used in exchange, and that commodity is money. Yes, these are all ones. Dan, I forgot to mention this, but you are buying lunch today. Now, we generally think of money as like coins or later bills, but the material of money is arbitrary. Smith wrote, "In all countries, however, men seem at last to have been determined by irresistible reasons to give the preference for this employment to metals above all other commodity." A sentence that shows you why we didn't teach him in crash course literature. But of course, it's really inconvenient to like weigh and measure metals every time you want to buy or sell something, so people hit upon the idea of making coins with a standard size and weight. Now, Smith is probably right that coins are much more convenient than bartering, right? Like, especially if the main store of value in your community is something like cattle. I mean, let's say you still need a pair of shoes. Well, they aren't worth an entire cow. Trading in partial cows fairly messy. It's also very bad for the cow's health, and the cow loses a lot of its value because, you know, it's no longer living. So that all makes sense, but it's problematic when Smith universalizes that observation by claiming that as a matter of convenience, every prudent man in every period of society must naturally have endeavored to create money. Smith, man of the Enlightenment that he was, is positing that the creation of money is part of human nature. Like in the second chapter of Wealth of Nations, Smith explicitly says that the division of labor is the, quote, consequence of a certain propensity in human nature to truck, barter, and exchange one thing for another. But yeah, no, like what made sense for 18th century city and town dwellers like Adam Smith doesn't necessarily apply to like all human beings over the course of many millennia. And if you don't believe me, you can just ask anthropologists. They love to talk about this stuff. So here's the fascinating thing to me. When you look at places where the social order is not based on money, we find that people actually don't barter at all. So David Graeber's book, Debt, The First 5,000 Years, surveys the literature of anthropology and discovers that in societies without money, people don't actually barter, but they do find ways to exchange. He quotes an anthropologist named Caroline Humphrey, who concluded, "No example of a barter economy, pure and simple, has ever been described, let alone the emergence from it of money. All available ethnography suggests that there has never been such a thing." Now, that's not to say that barter doesn't exist or that it never has. I mean, I just traded Stan 2 copies of my book Paper Towns for the candy left in this piñata. Big money, no whammies. 2 things of sweet tarts? Stan, that's not fair. All right, let's go to the thought bubble. So according to Graeber, barter was reserved for trade between strangers, even enemies. For most of human history, humans lived in small communities, and in those small communities, most exchange took place using forms of credit. Basically, when people know each other well, they're willing to trade with the future expectation that what one gives today will be repaid at some future date with something of roughly equivalent value. So in small localized communities, everyone is in debt to everyone else, and there's no real need of physical money like coins as a way of keeping accounts because, you know, you remember when someone owes you 40 barrels of beer or whatever. So Adam Smith's origin myth of money, that it derives from people's natural desire to make barter more convenient through the creation of a medium of exchange, really doesn't hold up to scrutiny. I mean, there are clearly examples of an alternate history where production and exchange work okay without actual coins or bills changing hands.